The airport buzzed with quiet energy, that strange combination of exhaustion and anticipation that filled terminals late at night. Malik Preston walked alone through the gate, his backpack slung over one shoulder, hoodie up, head down. At 17, he had learned to move through the world like a shadow. Not because he wanted to disappear, but because sometimes being seen came with consequences. His seat was in the back of the plane. Row 30. Window seat. He liked the window. It gave him something to look at, something to disappear into. The Atlanta lights still blinked outside the glass as passengers boarded one by one. Their voices hushed, their eyes heavy. Malik settled in quietly. No one beside him yet. No one behind. He tucked his backpack beneath the seat and leaned back. His fingers traced the outline of a worn medical guide tucked into his jacket, a pocket manual from his school's EMT prep course. It had been the one bright spot in a year otherwise filled with noise he didn't care to hear. Trouble. Noise. That's what most people expected from kids like him. He put in his earbuds and scrolled through a playlist labeled Focus. Instrumentals. No words. Just rhythm. Steady. Like a heartbeat. Somewhere near the front of the plane, a couple boarded with hushed voices and the aura of wealth. Malik didn't look up, but others did. The man had a tailored coat, dark and smooth like polished stone. The woman was glowing, not from makeup or fame, but from pregnancy. She moved carefully, protectively. 7 or maybe 8 months along. Malik noticed without staring. He had learned that skill too. Derek and Vivian Langford. He would learn their names later. For now, they were just passengers. Strangers in expensive clothes. Their voices were calm, but their presence was loud. The flight attendants moved through the aisle with robotic efficiency. Safety instructions. Seatbelts. Oxygen masks. Malik had heard it all before, but he watched their hands as they gestured. The way their fingers moved, sharp, practiced. He liked that. Precision. He thought of the EMT trainer at his school who had shown him how to hold pressure on a wound, who had taught him to stay calm even when someone screamed. The plane taxied. Lights dimmed. Wheels rolled. Malik closed his eyes as the engines roared to life beneath him. As the plane climbed into the sky, he imagined himself years from now. Coat on, stethoscope around his neck, walking through the doors of a hospital like he belonged there. No one on that flight knew his name. No one knew he had dreams too big for the life he had. No one knew that tonight, Malik Preston would save someone's life. But for now, he was just a quiet kid in seat 29F, watching the stars blink above the clouds. At 35,000 feet, the cabin lights dimmed to a soft glow. Most passengers had drifted into that quiet zone between restlessness and sleep. Malik leaned against the cold window, eyes half closed, music still humming in his ears. The engine's hum had become background noise, like the steady beat of time pushing them westward. A soft chime rang overhead. Seatbelt signs blinked on. Malik barely noticed. He was used to turbulence. A few bumps in the sky didn't faze him. But then, the plane jolted harder than expected, making a tray clatter a few rows ahead. He sat up straighter and paused his music. A voice came on the intercom, calm but clipped. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some light turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." The passengers around him muttered quietly, some adjusting their positions, others nervously glancing out the windows. A baby cried somewhere near the middle of the plane. Malik glanced toward the front. The wealthy couple from earlier, he still didn't know their names, were in row 7. He saw the woman shift in her seat, then stiffen. Her husband leaned over her, whispering something. Her hand gripped the armrest tightly. Another jolt rocked the plane. A flight attendant moved quickly down the aisle, holding on to the overhead compartments for balance. As she passed Malik, her eyes flicked toward the front. Her pace quickened. Something was wrong. Then came the sound that cut through the hum of the engines. A sharp cry. Not the baby. A grown woman's voice. Pain. Fear. Something primal. Passengers turned in their seats. Heads leaned into the aisles. Malik followed their gaze. Row 7. The woman, now clearly in distress, doubled over, clutching her stomach. The man beside her looked around helplessly, then yelled, "We need help! Something's wrong with my wife." A ripple of panic spread through the cabin like electricity. A different flight attendant grabbed the intercom. "If there is a medical professional on board," her voice quivered slightly, "please make yourself known to the crew immediately. We have a medical emergency." Silence. Passengers exchanged looks. A few shook their heads. No one stood. No doctors. No nurses. Just regular people on a regular flight, except now it wasn't regular at all. Malik's heartbeat quickened. He felt it in his chest, his throat, his fingertips. He looked down at his hands. They weren't shaking, not yet. But his thoughts raced. She's pregnant. 3rd trimester, maybe 7th month. Clutching low abdomen. Could be preterm labor. Could be placental abruption. Could be worse. He had studied all of this. In theory. In class. On dummies and in drills. Not on real people. Not on a plane. Still no one stood. The intercom stayed silent. The woman's moans grew louder. The man beside her shouted again. Desperate. "Please! Someone!" Malik inhaled sharply. And then, slowly, he unbuckled his seatbelt and stood. His legs felt heavy, his palms cold. But he took one step, then another, down the narrow aisle, toward the chaos unraveling at the front of the cabin. Malik's footsteps echoed strangely in his mind as he walked toward row 7, every eye in the cabin following him. He wasn't wearing a uniform, wasn't carrying a doctor's bag. Just jeans, a hoodie, and headphones hanging around his neck. To most, he looked like any other teenager. But inside, something had shifted. The lessons from his EMT program weren't just knowledge anymore. They were muscle memory waiting to surface. A flight attendant met him halfway down the aisle, her expression a mix of hope and skepticism. "Are you a doctor?" she asked, her voice tight with urgency. Malik shook his head. "No, but I've had emergency medical training. I'm in an EMT program at school. Please let me try. Someone has to." She stared at him for a second that felt longer than it was, then nodded quickly and stepped aside. "Come on," she said, guiding him the rest of the way. They reached row 7. Vivian Langford, though Malik didn't yet know her name, was pale and sweating, gripping the armrest with one hand and her husband's arm with the other. Her breaths were short and sharp. Her eyes flickered open for a second, unfocused. Derek Langford looked up as Malik approached. "Who the hell are you?" he snapped, eyes scanning the teenager in disbelief. "I can help," Malik said calmly, his voice firmer than he felt. "I have medical training. I've handled emergencies before. You're a kid." Malik looked him in the eye. "And your wife needs help now." Derek opened his mouth to protest, but another cry from Vivian stopped him cold. He stepped back, jaw clenched. "Fine," he muttered. "But if you screw this up." "I won't," Malik said. He knelt beside Vivian, his mind switching into gear. "Ma'am, I'm Malik. I'm trained in emergency care. I'm gonna help you, okay? Can you tell me what you're feeling?" Vivian moaned, barely able to speak. "Pain, low pressure." Malik nodded. "Can you rate it from 1 to 10? 10, she gasped. 12. He turned to the flight attendant. "I need gloves, blankets, water, and whatever medical kit you've got. Now." She rushed off without a word. Malik placed 2 fingers on Vivian's wrist. Her pulse was fast, almost racing. He looked at her belly, not rock hard, but tight. Contractions? Maybe. Bleeding? He needed to check. Time was slipping fast. He looked up. "Does she have any history of complications? High blood pressure? Preeclampsia?" Derek blinked. She had high blood pressure last month. The doctor said it was under control. That changed things. He knew enough to suspect something serious. Placental abruption was a possibility. If that was happening, there wasn't time. The flight attendant returned, handing him gloves and a kit. Malik worked quickly, slipping the gloves on and gently helping Vivian into a slightly reclined position. "Try to breathe with me," he said, demonstrating slowly. "In through the nose, out through the mouth." She tried. Her body trembled. Another passenger stepped forward, a middle-aged woman with a calm face and gray-streaked hair. "I'm a nurse," she said. "Want help?" "Yes," Malik said, immediately grateful. "Can you check for signs of bleeding while I stabilize her breathing?" The nurse nodded. She worked silently, professionally. After a moment, she glanced up at Malik, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "You're doing everything right," she said quietly. Derek, still hovering beside them, heard it too. He looked at Malik differently now, no longer just a kid from the back row, but someone who had taken control when no one else had. Vivian groaned again. Malik stayed steady, eyes on hers. "You're doing great," he told her. "Stay with me. We're not going to let anything happen to you or your baby." Vivian's face had gone white, sweat beading along her forehead as she fought against the pain. Her breaths were shallow and uneven, the kind that signaled rising distress. Malik leaned closer, pressing his fingers gently to the side of her neck, counting silently. Her pulse was still fast, maybe faster now. He glanced at the nurse beside him, who gave a grim nod. "She's losing color," she said under her breath. "Could be blood loss or shock. Either way, we don't have time." Malik took a steadying breath. "We need to bring her legs up, elevate her feet a bit. Can we get some pillows, folded coats? Anything?" The nurse turned to the flight attendants. "You heard him," she said. "Go." Passengers stirred. Someone from first class offered a blanket. Another passed forward a rolled-up hoodie. The crew worked quickly, following Malik's instructions without hesitation now. Vivian whimpered, curling slightly in pain. Malik positioned himself where she could see him. "Vivian, listen to me," he said gently. "You're going to be okay. We're doing everything we can. Try to keep breathing." Her eyes flickered open. "Hurts? My baby. I know. I need you to stay with me. Okay?" Malik turned to the nurse. "Any bleeding?" She nodded, her voice low. "Minimal but present. Probably placental. I'd say abruption is likely." Malik's chest tightened. This was serious. Life-threatening for both mother and child. The decision was clear now, they needed to land. Fast. He looked up at the flight attendant. "We need to alert the pilot. She's showing signs of placental abruption. We don't have long." "I'll tell him," the flight attendant said, already moving. Derek sat slumped beside his wife, silent for once, watching Malik with wide, uncertain eyes. She said, "She just wanted to see the ocean one more time," he muttered. Malik didn't answer. There wasn't time for reflection, only action. "Get me more water. Cold compresses too if you have them," Malik said. He opened the medical kit again, scanning for anything useful. An oxygen mask. He fitted it to Vivian's face and turned the valve gently, praying the airflow was working properly. Her breathing steadied just slightly. The nurse leaned close again. "You're doing damn good, kid. I'm just trying to keep her alive," Malik whispered. The intercom crackled overhead. "This is your captain. We've been informed of a medical emergency on board. We are currently coordinating an emergency landing in Phoenix. Estimated time until landing, 20 minutes. Gasps spread through the cabin. Passengers murmured prayers, fell quiet, or simply stared in tense silence. Malik didn't flinch. He checked Vivian's vitals again, then turned to Derek. "She's strong, but her body's working overtime. She needs calm around her. Can you talk to her? Help her breathe through it." Derek nodded numbly. He leaned in, clutching his wife's hand. "Viv, stay with me. Okay? You're going to meet our daughter soon." Vivian squeezed his hand weakly. Minutes passed in slow motion. Malik kept his eyes on her vitals, adjusted her positioning slightly, applied pressure where needed, checked for signs of progression. The nurse helped, moving with quiet skill. Another jolt of turbulence shook the plane briefly. Vivian gasped, her back arching slightly. Malik pressed his palm to her shoulder, steadying her. "You're safe," he said. "We're almost there. Just hang on." He looked around the cabin. The faces that had stared at him earlier with doubt or confusion now looked on with something else. Awe, fear, Hope. The kid from the back row had become the axis around which everything else turned. He didn't feel brave. His heart pounded. Sweat ran down his back. But his hands never trembled. He wasn't just applying what he'd learned in class. He was making decisions. Life or death decisions. And so far he hadn't faltered. The nurse whispered, "She's stabilizing a little." "You bought her time." Malik nodded once. "Let's make sure we use it." The cabin's tension thickened as Malik continued his careful work. Passengers shifted in their seats, some whispering prayers, others gripping armrests as the plane rocked gently on its course to Phoenix. Through it all, Malik remained focused on Vivian. The nurse, whose name tag read Martha, glanced over at Derek Langford, who sat rigid beside his wife. His face was pale, jaw clenched, eyes darting between Vivian and Malik. Doubt still lingered in his gaze. Martha cleared her throat, then spoke firmly. "Mr. Langford, I have to say, this young man is doing exactly what needs to be done. His decisions, his timing, they're textbook for managing this kind of emergency." Derek's brow furrowed. "You really think he knows what he's doing? He's just a kid." "I'm a registered nurse," Martha replied evenly. "I've seen plenty of emergencies in my years, on planes and in hospitals. I've also seen panic, hesitation, and poor judgment. Malik's actions so far have been precise, calm, and effective. Without him, things could have gone very badly." Derek swallowed hard, a mix of relief and guilt washing over him. He looked at Malik again, this time with something like respect. Malik, still kneeling beside Vivian, caught Derek's eye briefly. There was no arrogance in that glance, only quiet determination. "Vivian," Malik said softly, "I know this is hard, but try to focus on my voice. Breathe in slowly through your nose, hold for a count of 3, then breathe out through your mouth. Like this." He demonstrated, steady and slow. Vivian's breathing began to match his rhythm, her eyes fluttering closed as she tried to find calm. Derek reached over, taking Malik's advice and holding his wife's hand more firmly. A few passengers nearby whispered among themselves, their fear slowly turning to hope. Martha pulled out a small flashlight and shone it briefly into Vivian's eyes, checking her pupil response. "Her vitals are holding steady," she reported. "Her blood pressure's a little low, but that's expected." Malik wiped the sweat from his forehead. "We're not out of danger yet, but we're making progress." The intercom buzzed again. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are preparing for an emergency landing at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. Please remain seated with your seat belts fastened. Medical personnel will be waiting upon arrival." The announcement rippled through the cabin. Passengers sat up straighter, bracing for what was next. Malik glanced at Vivian's face, marked by pain but showing signs of trust now. He touched her hand lightly. "You're doing great. Help is almost here." Derek's earlier skepticism had faded completely. He leaned forward, whispering a thank you Malik barely heard over the steady hum of the engines. Malik glanced at the nurse, who nodded once more. "Keep her calm. Keep monitoring. We're going to make it." Outside, the night sky stretched endlessly, stars faintly visible above the clouds. Inside the plane, hope had taken root, fragile but real. The plane shuddered slightly as the captain's voice came over the intercom again, confirming the emergency landing in Phoenix was imminent. Malik stayed at Vivian's side, his hands steady despite the pounding of his heart. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, adding a surreal glow to the tense atmosphere. Passengers sat frozen, eyes wide, watching the small drama unfolding near the rear. Many had started to recognize Malik now, the quiet teenager who had taken charge. Whispers traveled down the rows. A woman several seats ahead clutched her husband's arm and nodded, clearly impressed. Malik adjusted the oxygen mask gently over Vivian's face, careful not to cause her more discomfort. He felt the subtle rise and fall of her breath and tried to match his movements to hers. The flight attendants moved quietly around them, handing Malik a small bag with medical supplies. "Blood pressure cuff, gauze, sterile wipes," Malik said aloud, his voice calm but focused. We need to keep her clean and monitor her blood pressure every few minutes. He wrapped the cuff around Vivian's arm, gently pumping the bulb to check her reading. The numbers flashed on the tiny screen, and Malik's eyes narrowed in concentration. Still a bit low, but stable. Derek hovered nearby, his usual composed billionaire demeanor replaced by raw worry. His eyes never left Vivian's pale face. Malik caught Derek's gaze and gave him a reassuring nod. "Thank you," Derek whispered, voice cracking. "No problem," Malik replied quietly. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, but the fear was tempered by his training and resolve. Outside the window, the city lights of Phoenix began to appear through the clouds. The pilot's voice returned to prepare passengers for landing. "Please make sure your seatbelts are securely fastened. Medical teams will be on standby as we land." Malik glanced at the nurse, who gave him a brief, encouraging smile. The tension in the cabin seemed to pulse in time with the plane's descent. Every second stretched longer than it should. Vivian's hand gripped Malik's tightly. He squeezed back, offering silent strength. The plane touched down with a gentle but firm bump. Applause rippled quietly through some parts of the cabin, but Malik barely noticed. He was already focused on the next steps, the medical team, the hospital, the safety of mother and child. As the doors opened, a group of EMTs and paramedics hurried aboard. Malik gave a quick summary of what had happened, the symptoms, the timing, the steps taken. The nurse translated his words into medical terms, earning nods of approval. Vivian was carefully lifted onto a stretcher, and Derek followed close behind, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over him. Malik stepped back, his knees weak but his spirit steady. Some passengers now looked at him with new respect. A few smiled quietly. For the first time on the flight, Malik felt seen. Outside, the cool desert night air waited. Inside, a young hero's journey was only just beginning. The moment the plane's wheels touched the runway, a collective exhale rippled through the cabin. The emergency landing in Phoenix was successful, but Malik knew the real challenge was just beginning. EMTs rushed aboard, their faces set with urgency as they prepared to take Vivian and her unborn child to the hospital. Malik quickly followed the medical team, his mind racing to relay every detail he could. He explained Vivian's symptoms, the timing of her pain, and the interventions he had performed during the flight. The nurse who had assisted him nodded approvingly at his clear and precise report. Outside the aircraft, flashing red and blue lights cast a chaotic glow over the runway. Paramedics moved swiftly, loading Vivian onto a stretcher with delicate care. Derek Langford trailed close behind, his usually unshakable demeanor fractured by raw emotion. His eyes were red-rimmed and glassy as he whispered hurried prayers under his breath. Malik stood at the edge of the crowd of passengers, the adrenaline beginning to fade, replaced by a crushing wave of exhaustion. Most of the passengers seemed too stunned to say anything, but a few looked at Malik with newfound respect. One older man gave a slight nod, and a mother whispered to her child, "That young man saved a life." Malik sank back into his seat, feeling invisible again despite the hushed murmurs around him. His backpack felt heavier now, not with books or schoolwork, but with the weight of responsibility he had carried on this flight. He looked out the window at the night sky, stars twinkling above as if silently cheering him on. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was charged but quiet. Derek sat down a few rows away, his hands trembling slightly as he stared ahead. Vivian's absence was a hollow space that seemed to stretch across the entire plane. Malik closed his eyes for a moment, the exhaustion catching up with him. Despite everything, a small spark of hope flickered inside. A hope born from the knowledge that his actions had made a difference. The plane was still on the ground, but Malik's journey had taken off into something much bigger than himself. The sterile brightness of the hospital corridor was a sharp contrast to the dim cabin lights Malik had left behind. Derek paced nervously, his polished shoes clicking against the linoleum floor as he awaited news of his wife and unborn child. The reality of the situation weighed heavily on him, breaking down the armor of a billionaire used to controlling everything with money and influence. After what felt like hours, a doctor finally approached. Both Mrs. Langford and the baby are stable, the doctor announced. Relief washed over Derek, and tears welled up in his eyes. He pressed a hand to his chest, barely able to catch his breath. The fear he had carried during the flight gave way to overwhelming gratitude. Someone gently called Derek's attention. He turned to see Malik standing quietly in the hallway, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his eyes fixed on the ground. The hospital staff had brought the teenager from the plane to meet the man whose family he had just saved. Derek's usual commanding presence softened as he extended a hand. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I owe you everything." Malik nodded, barely meeting Derek's gaze. He felt out of place in this world of polished floors and hushed conversations, but his quiet confidence spoke volumes. He had done what needed to be done, not for thanks or reward, but because it was the right thing. Around them, the busy sounds of hospital life continued. Nurses wheeled patients by, doctors hurried to their next appointments, and the distant beep of monitors underscored the fragility of life. For Derek, this moment marked a turning point. The realization that a young stranger had saved his family humbled him deeply. For Malik, it was another step on a path he hoped would lead to something greater. The two stood there, a billionaire and a teenager, connected by a life saved and a future that suddenly seemed full of possibility. The hospital's quiet hallway seemed almost unreal after the chaos of the flight and emergency landing. Derek Langford looked intently at Malik Preston, the teenage boy who had just saved his wife and unborn child. His mind raced, trying to think of the perfect way to thank him, to repay this unexpected hero who had stepped in when no one else could. "Malik," Derek began, his voice steady but filled with gratitude. "I can offer you anything you want. Money, scholarships, connections. You name it." Malik's eyes met Derek's, calm and sincere. He shook his head gently. "I don't want money," he said quietly. "I want to go to medical school. I want to become a doctor." Derek blinked, surprised by the teenager's answer. It wasn't what he expected. No flashy demands, no instant wealth, just a simple, determined dream. "You want to be a doctor," Derek repeated, his voice softer now, almost reverent. Malik nodded. "I've been training as an EMT at my school back in Birmingham. I want to help people, just like I helped your wife today." For Derek, it was a lesson in humility. Here was a young man from a world so different from his own, dreaming of a future few dared to imagine for themselves. Malik's courage and focus in the face of danger had proven his strength, but his quiet hope for opportunity showed a wisdom beyond his years. "I promise you, Malik," Derek said with conviction, "I will do everything I can to help you get into medical school. I'll make calls, find sponsors, open doors for you." Malik smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." The nurse who had assisted Malik during the flight stood nearby, her expression proud and approving. "You saved a life today," she said softly to Malik. "Now someone will save your future." Around them, the hospital buzzed with life, footsteps echoing in the halls, hushed conversations, distant alarms. But in this small corner a promise was made, a seed of hope planted. For Malik, the moment marked a turning point. No longer just a quiet teenager from Birmingham, he had become a symbol of possibility, proof that determination, empathy, and skill could change the course of a life. For Derek, it was a reminder that true wealth lay not in possessions but in the people we uplift and the lives we save. As they parted ways in the hospital corridor, a new chapter began. One defined not by power or privilege but by courage, dreams, and the unexpected connections that shape us all. News of Malik Preston's heroic actions spread quickly, first through the hospital staff, then across social media, and finally into the local news. The story of a quiet black teenager from Birmingham saving a billionaire's wife and unborn child during a turbulent night flight captivated many. People admired his bravery and skill, but more than that, they were inspired by his humble request, help to attend medical school. At Malik's high school, teachers and classmates gathered to celebrate his courage. The principal announced plans to honor him at the next school assembly, and local organizations reached out with scholarships and mentorship programs. Malik, who had always been reserved and uncertain about his future, now found himself surrounded by support he had never imagined. A foundation was soon established in his name, dedicated to providing resources and opportunities for underprivileged youth pursuing careers in healthcare. Malik's story became a beacon of hope, proving that with determination and a chance, anyone could overcome barriers and change their destiny. Despite the sudden attention and praise, Malik remained grounded. He returned to his daily routine, studying hard and preparing for college entrance exams. His dreams of becoming a doctor burned brighter than ever, fueled by the knowledge that he had already made a difference in the world. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Vivian Langford gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Derek visited the hospital frequently, never forgetting the teenager who had saved his family. He kept his promise, working tirelessly to secure Malik's place in a top medical school, knowing that this young man's future held endless possibilities. On quiet nights, Malik would think back to that flight, the tension in the cabin, the fear, and the responsibility that had been suddenly placed on his shoulders. He remembered how, despite feeling invisible at times, he had found his strength. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but now, with support and a clear goal, he was ready. The seat 29F on that flight became more than just a number. It became the place where a hero was born, where a life was saved, and where a future began. Malik Preston's story was far from over. It was only the beginning,